Ready? This is Warren Vanderhill interviewing Bill McIntosh as part of the Changing Gears follow-up interview project. It's July 1, 2014, and I want to begin, Bill, by again thanking you for your participation in this project.
No problem, my pleasure.
The first is a pretty obvious question, and that is, after Warner Gear closed now 5 years ago, what did you do to find another job?
Well, first of all, when we first walked out, or when I first walked out, had to deal with a lot of emotions, the closing of the plant and all the emotions that were involved with negotiating a severance package. It was pretty brutal. And I just didn't want to do anything at that time. We did have the severance package, and so I just kind of took maybe a couple, 3 months to get myself together and to heal some of the wounds, scars, whether, and did a lot of my honey-do list that I didn't realize I had because of work. And so I got into my house, started doing some painting, laying carpet, doing things like that. About the third or fourth month, I tried to go to Ivy Tech. The course that I wanted to take, the unemployment office felt like it wasn't in a good field, but I just wanted to get into computer information. And so they decided that I should go into computer electronics. Well, a little bit over my head, but I dealt with it. I mean, it was a little struggle, you know, after 35 years not being in school, you know, and there's a lot of us that went to school right after that closing.
Was this part of the severance package? You could go back to school?
It wasn't part of the severance package, but going to school was a government a rule. Once a company takes jobs away or out of the country, then it's what we call the TRA comes into effect, where you would get your schooling funded through the government as long as you went to school. You could not stop, you couldn't quit.
Oh, okay.
You had to go straight through school full time. So
did you have to be in a program where you were going to get a degree as the end point?
Exactly. It could be two. Most of us went to Ivy Tech because basically that's all they were going to fund for 2 years, and actually it was giving you 18 months. So everybody was kind of worried about the last 6 months, you know. So, but a lot of us went, and I started out in it, and like I said, I was, you know, like a lot of us, we were struggling, and mostly in math for me, with trig and calc. So, but anyway. Went to school and was liking it, you know, but I still wanted to be in the field that I wanted as far as computer communications. I mean, information. And so anyway, we were getting through my first year. In this same time, my son had enlisted in the Army Reserves, and he was finishing up boot camp, and he was way down there in Georgia, Fort Benning, and so we wanted to be there for his graduation. At the same time, I was trying to get a job at Magna. At Magna at that time, and so anyway, Ivy Tech had new rules by the time we come in that you couldn't be excused over 4 days. I needed 5 to get down there and go through the whole thing. So what I ended up doing was I had to go ahead and drop out, which I didn't want to, but I wanted to be there for my son. I mean, I just wanted to be there. This is Army, you know. And so they understood, and it froze my grades, so I could, you know, come here now that I got on here, and transfer some of my grades, but ended up having to let that go. At the same time, while I'm down there, I get a call from Magna for an interview. And so I came back after the graduation, went for the interview. That never came through. So now I'm out of school, so that means my funding stopped as far as the schooling, but the unemployment was still going, but I only had like 4 weeks to go. So now I'm really sweating now, because I'm like, was that the right decision? I mean, I was there for my son and everything. I don't want to take that away. You know, I really felt good about that. and I'd never been in the military, but that was a great experience
Oh, yeah.
just to see that, you know. And I really tip my hat off to the arm, you know, any armed force.
Yeah.
The guys that go in there, the women, it is just something else. So, but I just kept hitting the pavement and trying to. I mean, I came out here to Ball State. I bet you I put in maybe, about 8 or 9 applications, and then finally got that call. And so that's how I got on out here. And I started in dining, which most of the time everybody does, part time, and just God's blessing. Within a year, I put in for full time and got it, you know, and that's pretty fast. And then the next thing I know, I'm on midnights working, which was a rough shift to work. Rough shift to work. And I kept bidding. I didn't care what I got on days. I just wanted to get a day job. And right at a year again, I was on days. So it's been good.
So you're at Anthony Apartments now?
Anthony and Shiloh, yes.
And Shiloh,
yes.
Okay. And those are days?
Those are day jobs, yes.
Okay.
Doing good.
How did Gears closing impact you and your family?
Wow. First of all, it was an emotional thing because of the position that I was in at the time of the closing. I was vice president of our union, and our president went on sick leave and ended up having to get on disability. So that automatically put me in as acting president. Well, they kind of liked, you know, that I was in that position. So when the election came around, they voted me in. So I actually now I am president, and it was tough because a lot of people were upset, and you know, utilities were getting cut off, and due to the severance package that we agreed to, they stopped unemployment. I even had to get a hold of now Mayor Dennis Tyler, who was state representative at that time, and we were good friends, and we were able to go down to Indianapolis, the State House, and get that stopped, you know, because that was not an income, it was a severance package. So, but emotionally, my wife was real strong. She said it was just a couple times where she thought, you know, I need to go outside and get some air, but it was just nerve-wracking, you know. I mean, I was about to get an ulcer, I thought, but and then my children, I was one of the reasons I really had to be there for my son at the service, because I had a plan where I was going to send him to college at that time, and they cut me 5 years short of what I had planned. And it was hard for me. He didn't want to go to Ivy Tech, so he ended up going to service because he knew that financially we were strapped. So,
is he still in the service now?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Is he planning to make a career of that?
That's what he's telling me. Now, his mom ain't too happy about it, but you know, with the way what's going on over there now and everything. So, but family-wise, we had to really emotionally go through some things, and like I said, for my son to step up like he did, and he's the youngest of 4, so he's the only one that didn't get his opportunity like everybody, because the way that, you know, you go from making, you know, good money like that and insurance, and then you're down to nothing basically, and so it was hard for me to send him to school.
Now, during this entire period, your wife worked at Ball State?
Yes, during the whole time she's been out here. Actually, she was at BorgWarner at one time. She put in 14 years. She was always on the bubble and kept getting laid off. So when she got on out here, she just said that was it. You know, she's going to stay to a steady job, and she's been out here ever since. And even that was a big difference for her financially, because, you know, making 25 versus when she come in here making like 14 or 15 at the time. So, and we had to make that adjustment. And the kids, they, you know, the presents or the different situations, the things we did vacation-wise, all of that had to change. So we got through it though. We got through it. I'm not gonna say it was easy, and I'm not gonna say it was real hard, but it was just a transition that we had to go through.
Was the fact that she was already working here of any assistance to you in getting out of Ball State?
I want to say yes, because I don't want to say that it was just a definite, but for her knowing when the jobs were opening, and you need to get out there and put in an application. You need to get out there and put in an application. And then, you know, she knew some people out here. I mean, you know, everybody's like family out here once you start working. You get to knowing everybody. And so she would, you know, talk with HR sometime to find out, you know, hey, is there, you getting ready to do some hiring? Let me know so I can get my husband out here. So I would say yes. I would say yes.
The other reason I asked is that over the long time I've been associated with Ball State, I've always kind of made the assumption that if you can get in here through another member of your family, and if you can get on part-time, it helps you getting a full-time job eventually.
It seems to be that, yes, it really does, because once I got my foot in the door and you get out here as part-time, and then a lot has to do with your you know, being a good worker.
Well, that was my other point.
Yeah.
You can't come out here and just be some slacker.
You got to be a good worker.
You got to be able to perform.
Dedicated, and that's all I've known all my life, you know. So, but she did have a lot to do with getting me a foot in here. So,
do you still have any more thoughts of continuing your education?
Yes, I do. But then, here recently, actually right now I'm running for a political office of Center Township Board, and kind of pulled towards politics a little bit now. Well, and
well, that's in your family.
And it come through also with me being so involved in the union. When I, you know, my years in the union, I mean, you know, they go hand in hand. I mean, once I found out that, you know, politics has a lot to do with jobs, you know, so it kind of get me involved. I was in the CAP Council, which is, excuse me, you know, the CAP Council was the, I forgot to call it now, kind of the initials for that. Well, I always call it the political arm of the union.
It's a labor council.
Yeah, that's it. And so I got kind of involved in politics. My sister is the one that's saying, go to school, go to school. I really do, but I need to do this because the position I'm in right now, I was appointed to this seat that I'm in right now. Well, the term is up because it was my best friend who died, Robert Thompson. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, I do.
And so they appointed me to finish his term. And so that's where I'm at right now, kind of.
So is this the election in the fall?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're involved in the campaign again?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Very much.
The job that you have now, if you were to look out into the future, let's say 10 years or so, is this a job that you want to continue?
The job I have now, yes, that is my plan.
Okay.
You know, I do want to do 10 more years. Had I been able to finish at BorgWarner with a pension, this would have been a perfect job to have until you just don't want to work anymore, you know? But that wasn't the case, and so that put me on a 10-year plan. In order to even draw a pension here, I'd have to be, what is it, 10 years service, over 60. So.
Don't take this as a silly question because you're going to look at me and say, well, you probably know the answer, but I still want to ask it. How is the job that you have now different than the job that you had at Warner Gear?
I would say because I have a lot more say-so in this job than I did with BorgWarner. Even though you would bring the information to your supervisors and stuff, if they didn't feel like that was the way they wanted it to go, it wasn't going to go. With this particular job here, they instruct you on how they want it done. And now you can go in and, I mean, you can really do it and get it done and even take it to another level to, you know, they're like, wow, man, you know. And I just think I have more hands-on with this job.
So you have more initiative in this kind of job?
More. You got, yes, I would say that, yes. Yes. Yes,
The jobs at Warner Gear, as we both know, had incredibly good benefits because of the union contract. What kind of benefits do you have now?
I would say, out here, I would say at Ball State, you would have some, you got good benefits. You got good benefits. Now, the thing that I struggle with is when it comes to the union part of it,
Right.
and it's a whole other ball game. Where out here you would have to be in an institution of the state.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no striking, or not that I want to, but it just
Okay.
it's just that you know that off the bat. Well, and it takes and that's what unions. That's their leverage a little bit sometimes
Sure.
when you're trying to get the right thing done.
Right.
Not that it has to be a strike because we can strike,
Right.
but there is things you want to get done. You want to see things, changed,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's been a big challenge for me here,
Okay.
as far. And I am involved in the union, so
Right.
and that's all I know really. But benefits wise, I think they're both. It's a little bit more when you're in the manufacturing type
Right,
with the
right.
big unions.
Yeah.
They kind of take on a lot more of the bill,
Yeah,
so to
yeah.
speak, when it comes to healthcare.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you got benefits. That's the main thing.
Unions once occupied a very, very important place in American life. How do you view unions today?
I view them the same. I feel that our country is really doing itself a disservice by attacking the unions because they feel like, and it's a part of greed, and it's my own personal opinion on it, that they want to make more money company-wise by taking jobs out of the country, and then want to, even the ones they're bringing back, they want to say, okay, we bringing some manufacturing jobs back, but we're talking $9, $10 an hour. You can't raise a family on $9 an hour, period. But union-wise, I feel like that, and this goes both ways, union or company. You're going to have some people that I call power hungry, so to speak. You might get some that are, a rotten apple or whatever. But you need unions. You need unions because they do protect the workers and in a right way. So, but they're so weak now because of the attack on making it look like that unions go after high-paying wages and nobody's doing any work. You're in there making $30 an hour and you're sitting around, that kind of stuff. But and that's with anything. I just think that we really need to keep the unions. So you got to have unions.
Do you think it's fair to say that those kinds of relationships, economic relationships in American society now are out of balance? That when the unions were really thriving, especially a union like the UAW, there seemed to be much more balance from an economic standpoint in American society. As you look at this now, is it fair to say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that seems no longer in balance?
That's my whole point. Because, and it is fair to say, because, people are arguing and upset about it, but you're the ones that actually were kind of saying, do away with the unions, or the unions ain't
Right.
this, unions don't do nothing for me, but now you can't even get a job that's going to pay you a decent wage, and let alone benefits as far as health care goes, So you can say all the negative you want about unions, but they stabilize this country.
Yeah. Well, one other angle on this, and all the research I've done over the past decade or so about unions in Muncie in particular, there seemed to be as much focus in talking to people who were union members and union leaders like you, that wages and benefits were really important, but working conditions were equally important.
That's the whole, man, you said a lot. That is my whole point when I talk about unions, because it's the conditions. I understand you can get a better rate or as far as on wages or what have you, but it's the conditions, because there's work. There's work even out here that, if the unions was a little more involved, it's killing some people, but as far as body-wise, but it's about the conditions. It's always been about conditions. And that's where it started. That was the whole reason the union started.
Have you ever experienced any discrimination in applying for a job because you have been a union member?
Yeah, I without mentioning different companies or whatever, but it was tough. It was tough because my name associated with being a union president, and it was tough. I would get overlooked.
Well, you got to write it out. You got to put it on your resume.
You have to. I mean, how do you get around it? I even got it got so bad I would have to. I would say that I was working at BorgWarner, but I would leave the president of the union. I had to leave that out because I wasn't even getting a call or anything. Yeah. And it was, I think, because of that, people kind of, well, I'll put it like this. I got on out here, and word got out. And
you know who this guy is?
Certain people came to me to start putting feelers on where my head was. Yeah. So that goes to show you, yeah. Well,
I mean, I go back to the point you mentioned about applying for a job at Magna.
Right.
I mean, I've heard other people in town who used to be members of Local 287 say it didn't do you any good to put on your resume that you were once a member of 287.
I didn't even have to put it on there because my name, I mean, once you got to, I guess, to the president part of it and being in negotiations, and then even when President Obama came out here in 2008, I introduced him. Yeah. So I was a marked man as far as I'm concerned. And then I had anything to do with BorgWarner, anything to do with the union, it was just tough.
Well, I'd like to think that ultimately, in getting a job at Ball State, that it wasn't a negative.
It wasn't. But like I said, I was approached, by some upper,
supervisors.
Yes. Yes.
Do you think that this area, Muncie and surrounding environs, I guess I would say, has lost anything by no longer having a union voice in community affairs?
I think so, because it was a trickle-down effect even on the smaller businesses that were trying to unionize. Some, like Duffy Tools, had just unionized at that point in time, and they were getting work from BorgWarner. Delaware Machinery, they were also getting work from BorgWarner. Right. But I think that it hurt the whole community as far as Muncie goes, because there's a lot of people have left Muncie in order to try to find better jobs. A lot of people dealt with the issue that they wanted to work with union, because there's a lot of them that even went on out to Magna. Right. And they just couldn't handle it, because of the conditions. It wasn't because, the money, it was the conditions. They just couldn't handle it, and they were used to better conditions.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Do you still have contacts or friends from your time at Warner Gear?
Yes. There's a few out here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not the only one that came from Warner Gear after it closed out here?
No. I can. It's about 5 or 6 I can name right now. But and we still talk. But we don't bring it up that much. We really don't want to talk about it that much because of the way it went down and everything. And everybody's put it behind them. It's a new chapter in their lives now. I mean, if you get introduced to a friend of theirs, or I introduce them to a friend of mine, we work together at BorgWarner. That's about as far as it'll go. But we stay in contact a little bit.
Okay.
Facebook really helps.
Well, I would make that assumption. Yeah. Hey, but my last question before I ask you if you have any things you want to add is, as you now look back on that period a little bit more than 5 years ago, do you think that both sides in the closing of this BorgWarner plant did a pretty good job of handling that process?
Wow. No, I just don't think it was a good one, because there was a lot of bitterness from both sides. And the company side, was a little bit up over us on dealing with the situation of divide and conquer,
Okay.
and they were good at it. And so,
So you mean dividing the people who had 30 plus in and those who had less than 30?
yes,
Okay.
did it real well. And that was most of the headache of trying to negotiate and get through the whole thing. Now, overall, closing the plant and not tearing up any machinery, we didn't do all of that. You know, it wasn't nothing like that.
Right.
But it was just, I guess, the negotiating part of it was kind of bad. It was kind of bad. Yeah. I mean, we had half of our half of our negotiating committee was divided. It was no secret.
Well, I mean, I remember talking to you then. It was a very, very close vote.
Yes.
On what you were going to do.
Right.
But if my memory is right, at the time they closed, there were more people with less than 30 years in than there were with more than 30.
Oh yeah. And so once they put it to a vote, it was a done deal. I mean, the younger people they voiced. And my thing was, had they left the healthcare alone, we could have just iced it. I mean, just went on real smooth. But for whatever reason, the company wanted the healthcare, and we didn't want to see them go in and take that because we knew, which is talked to a friend of mine, that they're still going on with that case right now. And that's what we were trying to protect. That was the only thing. I just didn't want
And that's the case that the retirees still have pending.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Going into their health care.
Yeah. Well, those are all the formal questions I have, but I want to give you an opportunity as you look back on this period in your life to add any reflections that you might like to add.
I've looked over it maybe, I don't know, I just kind of periodically I'll go back and go through some of that. It was a great experience. I loved working there. I was able to support my family, raise 4 kids, help 2 go to college. I don't regret it. My thing is, I try to tell people now, get you a plan. Get you a plan and really go by it, because you don't want to depend thinking that you're going to, I mean, everybody, I was one of the 369 of us come 2013 when I had 30 years.
Yeah, right.
That legacy, that company was not going to want to deal with. And that was one of their major reasons for closing. But to think that you're going to get your 30 years, you've never been laid off, you know. So, but get you a plan. And I just learned some things by it. Wow, I learned some things about people in certain situations, and but it was an experience that I was blessed with, and it has helped me. It has helped me grow. It has helped me to look at life at a whole nother level. Whole nother level.
Yeah, union contracts aren't guarantees.
Oh no, and I try to explain that to people today. That all it takes is an ink pen down at the State House. Right. And they's like, what? What do you mean? It doesn't matter. You can have a contract, you can have this, you can have that. It doesn't matter. It's all politics. It really is. And people should get out and exercise their right to vote.
I couldn't really ask you this 5 years ago when we were making the film, but I can ask you now. When you think back to the spring of that year, 5 years ago, how long before that did you really in your heart feel this place is going to close?
Wow. The ironic part about them coming out, our local number is 287, and they came out on February the 8th, 2007, 2 years prior. And once we started trying to negotiate a severance package, and I seen how hard it was, I kind of went on it. I told my wife, I said, hey, it's going to close. Okay. No matter what we do.
This is at least a couple of years before.
Oh yes, oh yes. It was definitely, it wasn't even maybe a couple of months after they announced it that I just went on and settled in and said, look, they're going to close it. I started going just down to 40 hours a week, started budgeting, paying stuff off. So I was financially ready once they shut down. I didn't have any bills other than my home and utilities, but I just, I just went on and accepted it. I could easily get happy had they not shut down, but to be happy and thinking, oh no, and then turn around and they did, that would have been a big letdown. So, and then talking with my mom, she was like, you gotta look for the worst. Look for the worst.
Do you think that view was generally shared by your members of the union?
No. There was people, man, I tell you, all we gotta do is do this. I said, they don't want that. They really don't. We made a $50 million concession to keep the plant open.
Right.
See, 8 months after that, they wanted to go back in and open the contract. So they already knew they were going to close.
And the back end point, as I look at it from a historian's perspective, once you weren't going to go back in, that was sort of the end. I mean, the days of the plant being open were numbered.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. I felt that way right after that. I mean, it was just like, I got to open up another chapter in my life, move on.
But the majority of the members of the union didn't think that.
Majority, especially the ones that did the voting, the young ones that voted to go ahead and get the severance package, they were, they didn't believe it. Then they started getting laid off as we were still negotiating, but they just didn't believe it. Man, if you just go in there and give them wages. I said, man, we gave them $50 million worth of. I said, we're financing this closing. But they just, for some reason, I mean, I still hear it today.
Yeah, I do too. If you only made the last concessions, the plant would have been open for at least 2 or 3 more years. And you don't think that's true?
I just don't think so. I really don't, because they sent in people that didn't have no ties to the community, didn't know anybody. These people were just coming in, they were supposed to negotiate, shut it down, let's get out of here.
That's true. I mean, I know that since I knew one of them.
Right. That was their job. I mean, and that's why
they were there to shut it down and move someplace else.
That's it. That was it. And you're talking about one of their last unionized shop, for BorgWarner. The rest of them are not union. So.
Right, that's right.
And then they knew they timed it was right because our contract language had they moved to another plant, we would get to go with the job. Well, they had to wait for that contract to end before they shut it down. Once the contract was up in March, they shut it down in April. We couldn't go nowhere.
Sad story.
I know. It's sad. But like I said, I've been blessed and moved on. And
well, I'm happy you're out here.
Oh, yeah. I am happy.
It's a good place to work.
It is. It really is. I mean, I have really been tranquil, so to speak.
No, I can understand that.
Yeah, I mean, really it has. I mean, the pressure that I was under there, and I know I keep going back on that as far as the negotiating part of it, but, once you become a leader, people look up to you and they want answers, and you're trying to give them answers they don't want to hear sometimes, and you have to deal with that too, but it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to deal with.
Well, it's been great working with you on this project, I will tell you that. I really appreciate your willingness to come in and do this for a second time around.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
I haven't looked at it, but I mean, I've looked at it when we did it, and then I looked at it again, but some friends of mine, I've let them look at it and see how that was, and I get that same reaction every time. Well, we didn't know it was like that.
Well, it's been seen by an awful lot of people throughout the United States, so it's a pretty well watched film.
I know. People I don't even know. It's like, you were on that TV last night. I was like, oh my goodness, is they still showing that? This was just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, it's been shown a lot. It's in the sort of open PBS network film, so a lot of people can show it. Yeah. I mean, they may show it at 1 o'clock in the morning, but they go ahead and show it.
I just think y'all did a real good job on that. I think you showed both sides and how it was. And then you brought on how America is trying to deal with unions now. And they do need to bring them back, though, because the stability now is just it's just out there off the chain, man.
Well, I think our only regret was that we had an agreement, this will sound familiar to you, and I may not have ever told you this, from the management side that they were gonna cooperate in the making of the film. And right at the time we got to start actually filming, their attorneys up in Michigan said, no, you better not do that. And so that's why we were never officially able to get the management perspective.
Wow.
We had interviews set up and everything, and the weekend before we were scheduled to do some of those interviews out at the plant, they said, nope, that's not gonna happen.
Doesn't surprise
Yeah,
me at
no,
all. That's,
I guess it did me, and I've done a lot of research projects, and I thought, well, you know, they're doing this in good faith, and the guy who was the plant manager out there was somebody I knew, and he said, we're gonna go ahead and let you have access to the management side. And then right before we were scheduled to do the interviews, they said, no, we're not gonna do it.
don't surprise me at all.
It's the way it works sometimes.
Don't surprise me.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
We're out.
Oh.